start the fight, breaking down the walls in the dead of night. I don't come for peace, I come for the storm. Fanboys melt quick when the truth gets warm. Saw content's high, I'm collecting those tears. Just got started, but I'm cutting through fears. I'm not here for brand deals, I'm not for sale. I expose your lies, rip off the veil.
With the hype around the Switch 2 starting to die down, something very interesting just started to happen. Something I knew would happen eventually because it always does. The fanboys started crawling out of the woodwork. They waited, they were patient. They sat there quietly while everyone else debated the console, the price, the games, and then the moment things slowed down, they pounced. All of a sudden, they started parading around saying, "Oh, the Switch 2 boycott failed. See, you guys accomplished nothing. You made all this noise and for what? Nothing changed." And here's the funny part. I didn't even know there was a Switch 2 boycott. That's the first lie in this whole narrative. Because the conversation was never around boycott the hardware itself. Nobody was saying don't buy the console at all. Well, at least most of us weren't. In fact, a lot of us were saying the opposite. I said it myself. For what you're getting, the Switch 2 is decently priced. I did sit here and say you should buy it used because Nintendo doesn't deserve your money, and I still do stand by that. Now let me be crystal clear. It is wrong, absolutely wrong, that Japan gets a cheaper one than we do. That's unfair. That's insulting to the Western audience who have supported Nintendo for decades. And I still stand by that criticism 100%. But overall, the price point of the console itself wasn't really the issue. That wasn't the hill that I wanted to die on. No, the real issue were the games. Specifically, Mario Kart World. The conversation was about boycotting that game. Because a lot of us do not want to normalize $80 games. And as the new standard for Nintendo games, that's the battle. That's where the line was drawn, because if you let one $80 game slide, guess what happens next? Suddenly, every major release creeps up to $80, and then the consumer has been conditioned to accept it. So let's put this myth to rest. It was never really about the Switch 2, it was more about the overpriced games. Now, Nintendo Prime made a video where he claimed this boycott failed for a bunch of reasons, and look, I'll be the first to admit, technically the Mario Kart World 1 did fail. I can own that. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat reality. Sales for the game were strong, it charted, it sold well. On paper, yes, the boycott failed. But here's the thing. Nintendo Prime loves to say, go after the company, not the creators. He preaches that constantly. It's one of the main talking points. Don't target individuals. Don't criticize fellow YouTubers or consumers. Aim your criticism at Nintendo. That's the rule he lays down. Yet, let's be real here. Prime didn't even touch this topic when it was at its peak. He waited until the hype had already died down to finally make his video. When the rest of us were in the trenches, actually creating content, actually having these conversations, he was nowhere to be found. He wasn't even relevant to what was going on at the time for the last 2 weeks. And now, he and Player Essence have decided to suddenly come back into the spotlight, not by taking on Nintendo, not by addressing the company itself, but by going after another content creator, Nintendine. And why? Because they can't handle the criticism, they can't handle someone putting the spotlight on their favorite piece of plastic and pointing out flaws that everyone else can see. So what's their solution? Prime says he wants to debate Dean. Because supposedly Nintendine is wrong. Player Essence takes a step further, claiming Nintendine just isn't wrong, but that he is a liar and he's grifting. That he only is doing it for views, so how quickly the mask slips. The moment someone touches Nintendo, suddenly it's not criticizing the company, it's attack the creator. And that's hypocrisy. I've noticed this for a long time, especially with Player Essence. They love to come after people who speak critically about Nintendo. They love to wag their fingers at so-called haters or grifters, but somehow they never, and I mean never, go after people like beat-em-ups. They never call out RGT, and Player Essence will never come after Dreamcast. Why is that? Why are some creators apparently off limits? Because they're homies. What do you expect? Player Essence is huge fans with them, so of course he won't go after them. That's why whenever you hear Player Essence ranting about how much he hates liars or how much he despises Nintendo grifters, you need to stop and ask yourself, does he really? Does he really stand for those principles? Because if he did, he hold everyone accountable. He wouldn't cherry pick targets based on whether they're in his friends group or not. But he doesn't, because at the end of the day, he's not about honesty, it's about integrity. It's about staying relevant. It's about protecting the brand that he's built, the connections he's made, the buddies he doesn't care to call out. Now let's give Primey a little credit. He did get some things right in his video on why the boycott failed. He pointed out that we didn't have the big leaders on board, and while that's partly true, we did have two pretty big leaders. We didn't have beat-em-ups. We didn't have Switch Force. We didn't have Player Essence. We didn't have Nintendo Prime himself, Austin John Plays, or any of the other actual Nintendo YouTubers. And that's the sad truth. These larger creators knew exactly what was going on. They knew Nintendo was pushing boundaries. They shouldn't be normalized. But instead of standing up for the community, they caved. They defended Nintendo, not because they believed it was right, but because they didn't want to risk their channels. They didn't want to risk their brand. They didn't want to risk their perks. And I'll be honest, on one level, I get it. Nobody wants to jeopardize their livelihood. Nobody wants to throw away years of work. But here's my problem. Don't sit there and pretend you're the voice of the community if you won't actually stand up for the community. Don't claim to care about Nintendo's ecosystem if you're willing to sell it out the moment it benefits you personally. Now, you may have not said those words, but that's pretty much what you mean. At least that's my opinion. And let's be honest, a lot of us honestly do believe you guys would sell out the community if it meant you guys got to keep your seats at the table. And when that happens, when enough of them do sell out, Nintendo gets worse. And when Nintendo gets worse, guess who suffers? Not the creators with their sponsorships and ad revenue, the fans, the players, the people paying $80 for a damn video game. And when that day comes, when the dam breaks and the backlash finally hits, people will remember. They will remember who stood up when it mattered and who looked the other way. They will remember who warned them and who dismissed them. So yeah, you guys can laugh and claim that the boycott failed or that we failed, but the real failure doesn't really sit with us or with the smaller channels who try to push back. The real failure sits with you guys, the Nintendo creators who refuse to act and do the right thing. And one day, when Nintendo keeps pushing the line further, when the prices climb higher, when the practices gets worse, those bigger names are going to have to answer for it because they helped enable it. They defended it. They gave Nintendo cover when they should have drawn a line. So go ahead, mock us all you want, celebrate the so-called failure. But don't forget this, every time Nintendo tests the waters, more fans wake up. Every time they try to push further, more people notice. And one day, when that critical mass is reached, no amount of fanboy damage control will be able to contain it. And when it does, those who refuse to act and do the right thing and refuse to stand up for the community are going to have to live with that choice. So unfortunately, it did fail, and that's the truth none of us wanted to hear. But at the end of the day, no one can say we didn't try to do the right thing. No one can say we didn't raise the red flags early. No one can say we didn't point out the patterns. Unfortunately, many of us were branded with labels like Nintendo haters, Nintendo grifters. And let's be honest, they knew exactly what they were doing when they threw those labels at us. They knew that if they could frame us that way, if they could poison the well and get the community to see us as nothing more than people with an agenda, then they could make sure nobody would listen to us. And unfortunately, it worked, especially when their favorite content creators, the ones with the big platforms, kept saying that's not true, and they were moving the goalpost or focusing attention elsewhere. And here's the part that gets me. Some of us actually do love Nintendo. That's the irony. Myself, Blast, Nintendine, even oh no, it's Alex. We're not sitting here rooting for Nintendo's downfall. Alex has said countless times he wanted to switch to for the physical games. Why? Because he values those games. Because he values the experience. Because he wants Nintendo to succeed in a way that respects its fans. But when it came down to the anti-consumer policies, when the games are overpriced, when the same mistakes keep repeating, how can you just look past it? Loving something doesn't mean you defend its worst habits. Sometimes it means calling it out even when it hurts. And even if there are people who truly don't like Nintendo, that doesn't automatically mean what they're saying isn't true. Facts are facts, regardless of who speaks them. But what do we hear instead? The Nintendo fanboys running defense instead of accepting the criticism for their favorite piece of plastic. They bend over backwards to protect the brand as if the company needs shielding from its own paying customers. And I have no proof of this, but let's not kid ourselves here. These are the same people to this day that generally believe they were the reason the Wii U failed. Not Nintendo's disastrous marketing, not the overpriced console, not the confusion between the Wii and the Wii U, not even the copyright striking of people who were live streaming their games, which was basically a declaration of war on the very community that supported them. No, in their minds, the Wii U failed because the fan base didn't support it enough, that the delusions were dealing with. They'll rewrite history just to absolve Nintendo of blame, when in reality, the company's own ignorance and incompetence were what buried the Wii U in the first place. So yeah, you can keep mocking us, you can keep calling us haters, you can keep saying we're just being negative or that we don't get it, but here's the truth. That doesn't change the reality of what's going on. It doesn't change the fact that we, along with plenty of other people who don't blindly worship Nintendo, are actually the ones doing the right thing. We're the ones standing up for the consumer. We're the ones fighting for the community that you fanboys refuse to stand up for when it actually matters. And we're going to continue to speak for the community. We're not going to sit back and let Nintendo keep making the same mistakes unchecked. Somebody has to say it, even if it's unpopular, even if it gets us mocked, even if it gets us labeled haters. Because at the end of the day, what's worse? Being called a hater for holding a company accountable, or being a fanboy who lets the industry walk all over them while pretending that it's loyalty? We're not doing this because we want Nintendo to fail, far from it. We're doing this because we actually care about the industry, about fair treatment for consumers, about a healthy gaming community. When we call out Nintendo, it's not because we hate them. It's because we know they can and should be better. If we don't say it, then who will? Certainly not the Nintendo fanboys, because they've proven time and time again they'd rather protect the brand than protect the community. So yeah, mock us, dismiss us, call us whatever names you want, but at the end of the day, we're the ones fighting for the consumer. We're the ones standing up for the gaming community, and whether the fanboys like it or not, history will prove that we are the ones on the right side of this fight. And now it's time to read off the members of the channel. We got Koros Objective, Maximilian Pegasus 88, Mad Fox 94, Shade Milkman, Odo is Justin, Brian Payne, Andy Ritz, J Wesby 65, C Stars Piplup, Astrius Lane, Maximus 2400, John Molina, and Dustin 360. Thank you so much for becoming part of the crew. And if you truly enjoy this content, why don't you think about becoming a member? It's only $1 a month. You get special emotes, badges, and you get a shout out at the end of each video until it becomes too long, and then it'll be turned into a credit roll. And also, I got an awesome merch lined up for you guys. I got amazing shirts, hoodies, I got coffee mugs, I got desk mats, I got a bunch of different kinds, so why don't you check it out also. And please like, share, and subscribe, and until next time guys, stay vigilant.
You can cry in the comments, but you won't survive. Like and subscribe if you feel that vibe. We're